Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, welcome. We're reading Scum Villain today. Yippee! Yippee! My brain is weird today, so we're going to see how I fare with reading. Exactly that. Do I have anything to say? I don't think so. I don't think so. Last we left off, Shinchincho fucking died. He's fucking dead, okay? He's dead. Obviously he has a plan, because he's the way that he is. Because of the way that it is. Hi. Hi, chat. We have... Oh my god. I'm still very sleepy and tired. But that's okay. That's okay. We're gonna wake up. I love reading. I love reading this book in particular. But yes, I have my tea. It's so good. Whoa, whoa. We're on page 167 for chapter 9, titled Borderlands. I fucking love this book so much. This whole chapter, I might be able to get through this whole. You know what? Let's not force it. There's a scene break a bit before the end of the chapter, and I think I can end there. But yeah. Ooh, this book is so fucking good. This book is so good. Okay. Let me get situated. And let's get started. Chapter 9 of Scum, Volume 2. Right, I can read. Ooh. Actually, I need to pin back my hair for 1 second. Sorry for the inconvenience, especially because I can't find my headband thing. Oh, where are you? Where are you? Oh, it's right there. It's on my desk because I used it. Yeah. Okay. Get my hair out of the way because it's getting too long. I need to cut my hair. Let me pay for my haircut. Alright, Borderlands. Evening came with high winds in the Borderlands, whistling through the scattered houses of the little garrison, all down the street. Only a single tea house shone from within. Warm yellow lantern light lent the place a semblance of life. Sorry, adjusting my mic. It's creaky. Okay. The so-called Borderlands weren't the border between two countries or cities. Rather, they were the border between the demon realm and the human realm. The two races belonged to different worlds. For the most part, the endless abyss ruptured the space between them, but there were always those few places where the boundary between realms was weak, where time and space were in disarray, and where the residents of the two realms would often end up slipping back and forth between them. On occasion, in some cases, someone maliciously stole across the border. Few ordinary people were willing to live in a place where the demon race could emerge from thin air and vanish like ghosts, sulking around one day, then killing and pillaging the next. Thus, signs of human life in the Borderlands only grew sparser by the year. Even when the dimensions of different realms began to intermingle in a prosperous city, the population would usually end up evacuating in a mass migration, leaving behind only the disciples sent by the cultivation world to guard the Borderlands. SVS, this is nice. Yeah, so nice. Hi, welcome to Furious. I love that name. That's so good. Lulu poured the newcomer a bowl of hot wine as she chatted with the few others gathered around their stove. Brother, where did you come from? The south. Out that way? A few people looked at each other, their expressions understanding. It must be hard out there right now. The newcomer raised a bowl of wine and frowned. Who said it wasn't? There's a battle twice every 3 days. No one can endure that kind of torture. Oh, wait, I said she, but it's actually he, chatted. Never mind. Liu is a man, I suppose. Boring. Anyway. Da, da, da. Songchong Mountain and Huanhua Palace both belong to the four major sects. Why are they making such a fuss these days? Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I took my allergy meds late, and now I'm very sneezy. Oh, I don't know why today in particular is a very sneezy day. I think my immune system is going haywire. Ugh, why are they making such a fuss these days? Someone in the corner cut in. The disciples can't come face to face for a second without getting into a huge fight. Won't their sect leaders control them a little? How long have you been in this damn place, where birds won't even stop to shit? Liu said. You've gone too long living under a rock. It's precisely because they have their sect leaders' tacit permission that the disciples have been fighting harder and harder. Why's that, Liu, tell us about it. Liu cleared his throat. It's quite complicated to explain. Do you know who the current head of Huanhua Palace is? I heard it's some kid. Liu laughed harshly. If Lo Binka can be called a kid, then you and I are less than nothing. This Lo Binka is something else. He came from Sangchong Mountain sect, and was even the head disciple of Qingjing Peak's Shen Qingzhou. At the Immortal Alliance conference a while back, he dominated the rankings. Now that was truly a sight. If he came from Sangchong Mountain, why would he become the head of Huanhua Palace? A listener said doubtfully. After the Immortal Alliance conference, Lo Binka disappeared for 3 years. No one knows where he went or what he did during that time. Shen Qingzhou said that he'd perished, so everyone believed that he was already dead. Who could have known that 3 years later he'd make a grand comeback? He had even become an influential figure at Huanhua Palace. Then he forced Shen Qingzhou to self-detonate on the spot in Huayue City. I never understood that, said the newcomer. This Shen Qingzhou, was he wrongly accused or did he deserve such a fate? Who can say, said Liu. Oh, my nose. Oh, God. I don't even know if my meds are going to help today. Oh, sorry, this is kind of gross. Who can say, said Liu. That Sangchang Mountain is naturally united against outsiders, and they'll fight anyone who says anything. They've always been like this, holding relations over reason. They won't even let people talk about something as damning as that Anding Peak Lord Shang Qinghua mentioned, fleeing to the demon realm. Huanhua Palace changed masters not long after that Huayue City incident. The old palace master went into seclusion and disappeared without a trace. Lo Binka took power in his stead and kills anyone who says anything otherwise. All because of a dead man? Someone muttered. This dead man has quite a few waves, said Liu. Shen Qingzhou is from Sangchong Mountain sect, and he was even the peak lord of the second-ranked peak. His corpse should by rights go back to Qingjing Peak to be interred with the former generations of peak lords, but the problem is Lo Binka refuses to return the body. Everyone was imagining something along the lines of Lo Binka whipping the corpse or putting it on display, and their hair stood on end. If he refuses to return it, can't Sangchong Mountain take it by force? Someone asked. That peak lord of Baijian Peak is still around. Liu shrugged. He can't beat Lo Binka. What? The group's world view was shattered. In the eyes of the world, the peak lord of Baijian Peak. I said that all wrong. Oh my god. The Peak Lord, Abaijan Peak, had always held the position of undefeatable war god. That this Peak Lord couldn't beat someone or whatever was honestly unthinkable. You don't know? Lulio asked. Ever since Huayue City, Baijan Peak's Lu Qingge has fought Lobinka countless times, but he's never won once. Lu Qingge mentioned. And that's not all. Lobinka brought Shen Qingzhou's body back to Huanhua Palace, and only a few days later he personally kidnapped Chan Cao Peak's Wu Qingfeng. Chan Cao Peak has always disregarded worldly affairs, someone said. They help the dying and heal the injured, so how did they manage to provoke this devil incarnate? Lobinka took him back to Huanhua Palace and told him to heal and revive Shen Qingzhou. Lu Liu said. The man had been dead so long he'd gone stiff. What was there to heal? When I see the two sects fight, Sangchong Mountain always likes calling Huanhua Palace the Dogs of Demons. Why is that? The newcomer asked. That's because, for some reason, the entirety of Sangchong Mountain, from top to bottom, insists that Lobinka is a fiend from the demon race, said Lu Liu. Numerous abbots of Jiahua Monastery have personally testified that spiritual energy circulates normally inside Lobinka, but Sangchong Mountain still insists on calling him that. Those two sects go back and forth repaying grievance with grievance, growing their feud larger and larger. Oh my god. This is fun. Sorry. Ugh. Why? Ugh. The way I see it, one day their ships will capsize together and no one will survive. So, in the end, Lu Liu didn't forget to comfort himself. Being sent to guard the border to be free and idle like us was actually a good thing. I really can't understand what's going on with this master-disciple pair, let alone those two sects, the person in the corner said, confused. One theory is it comes down to a grudge as deep as the sea, but there's another theory, and this old Lu thinks that one is more believable. Let me tell you all. Lu Liu was about to launch into another round of enthusiastic gossip when suddenly a burst of knocking sounded outside the door. Everyone in the room immediately raised their guard. All their mischief and exhaustion was swept away, and each individual readied their weapons and spiritual artifacts. The Borderlands possessed only rare traces of human life, being abnormally desolate. The members of their squadron were the only permanent residents of the entire garrison. The ones who'd gone out on patrol wouldn't have returned so quickly, and the few remaining residents were even less likely to risk death by wandering outside in the middle of the night. Give me a second, I really need to grab some tissues. Ugh. Okay. Where was I? The Borderlands possess. Huh? No one inside responded, and after a while there were two more knocks on the wooden door. Who is it? Lu Liu called out harshly. Suddenly, a chill wind blew by and extinguished the oil lamps and candles on the table. The room instantly turned pitch dark, leaving behind only the dull red light of the stove faintly burning. The silhouette of a man carrying a sword on his back cast itself through the window paper. The person called in a clear voice. I don't know who this is. I don't remember who this is. Luga, it's me. It's too cold today, so I came back early. Open the door and let me warm up with a cup of wine. The group released the breaths they were holding and cursed. Oh, Chin, are you trying to die? Just knocking on the door without a word? If we didn't know any better, we'd have thought you were eaten by a ghost. The person outside the door chuckled. Lulu felt something was strange, but he couldn't figure out what. He said, "Come in," and opened the door. A gust of frigid winds swept into their faces, but there was nothing there. Lulu slammed the door shut. "Light the lamps! The lamps! The lamps!" The newcomer's hand trembled. He turned and formed a fire seal, and the flickering flame illuminated a few silhouettes. He'd yet to light a candle when he turned back around and stuttered. "Luca, I want to ask you." "What are you stammering for?" Lulu said, impatient. "There were only 6 people in this room, right? So why am I seeing what looks like 7? Dead silence. Suddenly there was a loud cry. No one knew who had attacked first, but screams and the sound of clashing weapons rose and fell. Lulu yelled, "Light the lamps! The lamps!" Everyone hurried to form fire seals, but their movements were too uncoordinated. The flames and silhouettes swayed wildly and disoriented their vision, making it even harder to see who it was. Who was who? Afraid of harming their own, no one dared to swing too aggressively, and so the thing that had warmed into their midst took advantage of the chaos. It was like catfish in turbid water, a claw here, a knife there. As Lulu mentally cursed, something suddenly grabbed him by the neck. His eyes rolled to the back of his head, and his feet slowly left the ground, unable to see what had grabbed him by the throat. Just when he thought his life would end right then and there, the door flew open and a whirling gale swept inside. Another silhouette charged in. No one saw how the newcomer fought, but Lulu heard an uncanny cry by his ear that sounded like it had come from the thing holding him by the neck. Its grip loosened. The 6 people in the room hadn't yet recovered from their fright, and some were lying flat on the ground. This new person snapped his fingers, and the oil lamps in the room lit all at once. He bent down to study the bodies for a moment, then rose. "They're fine, just unconscious." This person was caked in black mud, like he'd just been excavated from a grave, and his face was covered in whiskers that densely obscured his facial features. Despite his lean figure, his face was that of a large, bearded man's. Lulu finally stopped shivering and stared him up and down for a long time before cupping his fist. "Many, many thanks to this distinguished gentleman for your assistance chasing away that creature." The new person slung an arm over Lulu's shoulder. "This humble one has something to ask." "Please do." "What year is it?" Scene break. We are on page 174. Let's go. As Shen Jingzhou had tumbled his way down from the mountain, covered in mud, half rolling, half crawling, he had fervently prayed for airplanes shooting towards the sky to be destroyed 10,000 times. Destruction by spiritual energy implosion, or by asshole. Either was acceptable. Originally, most of the strategies he'd thought up to preserve his life had involved faking his death. But what was the point of faking one's death? The trope of plotting a fake death with a puppet or look-alike while allowing the original person to flee had been done to death in TV series. So the strategy he'd settled on was dying for real. That day in Huayue City, he really and truly had self-detonated and even done a good deed along the way, absorbing an enormous amount of the berserk demonic energy in Luo Binghe's body. To say that his meridians had been ground to dust was no exaggeration. Only by facing death could one return alive. Just a footnote, this is a play on a quote from Sun Tzu's Art of War. Throw them into danger and they will survive. Put them on deadly ground and they will live. The sun, moon, dew mushroom was also called the flesh mushroom. And this name was entirely literal. Ew. Flesh mushroom has a footnote, is another name for the real-life Lingzhi mushroom, which the sun, moon, dew mushroom is based on. Shut up. It's stupid. Though this mushroom wasn't especially useful for cultivating, it still grew by collecting spiritual energy from nature along with essence from the sun and moon. If you planted its sprout in soil rich with spiritual energy, nurtured it, meticulously sculpted it, and watered it with blood and chi, once it matured, you could cultivate a living body of flesh. The body could grow just fine, but it was impossible to also create a soul via this method. That was to say, you could only grow a soulless, empty shell. You couldn't find a more suitable vessel. Plant a little shen in the spring and harvest a big shen in the autumn was no longer just a dream. But the dew mushroom wasn't a Chinese cabbage, something you could simply grow with a handful of fertilizer and water. Shen Jingzhou had destroyed a number of mushroom sprouts before he'd cultivated one that hadn't grown crooked. A good while back, he and Chang Qinghua had calculated the coordinates to carry out this long-distance operation. Beneath the tallest building of Huaye City, they had set up a transportation array, and at the time when the sun was highest, Chang Qinghua had triggered a second array, this one for activation on Sangchong Mountain. The moment Shen Jingzhou's soul left his body, he had been sent to the mature dew mushroom, which had been buried deep in the mountains of the Borderlands. 3 locations, 3 arrays. If you connected them with straight lines, they would have formed the most stable shape, an equilateral triangle. Reasonably speaking, it was absolutely stable, absolutely reliable. The only flaw was a certain person. Great Master, airplane shooting towards the sky, was just too reliable. Shen Jingzhou had been worried about flaws like over large arms or uneven legs, or a crucial part simply not growing, but none of these problems had occurred. However, sure enough, using chemical fertilizer to mature the sun, moon, dew mushroom had resulted in some side effects. Just after waking, Shen Jingzhou had waited quietly for a while, but he hadn't heard that detestable Google Translate like notification. He internally exploded with joy. The system hasn't appeared. The system hasn't appeared. This big shot's changed hardware. I'm not going to reinstall a virus like you. Fucking bitch. Though he could only rest assured temporarily, he couldn't resist dancing in joy. Dancing in joy, my ass. His whole body was still buried in the ground. He couldn't move an inch. For a day he remained buried, gathering strength from his fingertips until he could finally move his limbs. Only after this did Shen Jingzhou finally, shakily crawl out. Once he broke through the earth's surface, he didn't even get the chance to revel in the fresh air of freedom before he fell face first onto the ground. This body isn't listening to my commands again. This left him splayed on the mountainside. Shen Jingzhou spent an entire day walking while doing radio calisthenics? What the fuck? Calisthenics. Right. Right up until the evening, when his gait finally resembled a normal person's. At least, he was no longer simultaneously putting the same arm and leg forward. The human cast they used had been based on his former appearance as Shen Yuan. He didn't compare to Shen Qingzhou's immortal poise, but it wasn't a bad mortal container. It just had a bit of a it just had a bit of a certain listlessness. The listlessness of a worthless pretty boy idling his life away. But because he'd used some of his blood while cultivating the dew mushroom, a touch of foreign influence was inevitable. When Shenjingzhou tumbled to the side of a creek and used a sharp mountain rock to scrape away his whiskers for a look, his new face was still 3 or 4 parts of 10 similar to Shenjingzhou's. Without a word, he repasted the whiskers onto his face. Ew. Finally, after managing to tumble his way to the bottom of the mountain, he grabbed a passerby and asked the year. Fuck, it's already been 5 years. He could understand that right after waking up, his body was uncoordinated and occasionally unable to move because he needed some time to adjust to the new configuration. But only waking up after being buried for 5 years? What was with this? Also, a roast was a roast, but this body was practically bursting with spiritual energy. The original Shenjingzhou's body had been quite abundant in spiritual energy when without a cure wasn't causing it trouble, but the difference between that and the sensations he had in this one, it was like the difference between 2 bars of battery, still enough to use, and a full charge, the second after charging and pulling the cord. He would even go so far as to say that he was a generator. Did this count as shedding his body and replacing his bones, changing his tendons, and cleansing his marrows? Those both have footnotes. An idiom described being reborn as a Taoist, but could also mean turn over a new leaf or change completely. And then refers to, and then it's in Chinese, a something, martial arts focusing on qi circulation manual. Was this the drumbeat leading up to his own ascension to OP-hood? After so many years, Shenjingzhou felt for the first time that he'd acquired a lick of the dignity owned to reincarnate transmigrators. For the first time, his unskilled self would perhaps not drag down his seniors in the transmigration regiment. When he turned back in, Lu Liu was rambling. These past few years, the demon race has invaded more and more often. All sorts of demons, ghouls, and ghosts have poured into the human realm. A major battle is likely imminent. Oh, I haven't yet asked this distinguished gentleman for his immortal name. The words, ha ha ha, this humble one, is the untalented Qingjing Peak Lord of Sangchong Mountain, the Shuya Sword, Shenjingzhou of the Central Plains, veered off course just before they reached Shenjingzhou's throat. This fucking idiot. So close, so close. He'd almost given them his old name. He couldn't think of another name in the moment. And after muttering for a bit, he resolutely said 2 words. Peerless Cucumber. Everything that had happened before was as unto smoke. From today forth, as he walked the Jianghu, he would use this ID, which had been plastered all over the comments section for years. After he spoke, Shenjingzhou glided away, leaving only a room full of petrified people in its wake. After a while, the newcomer mumbled. He just said he was peerless. What was that? Peerless chrysanthemum? Lu Liu guessed. Wasn't it peerless crown? No. It was peerless crazy flower. Shenjingzhou had walked several tens of feet away, but at the sound of this, his feet slipped out from under him. Perhaps he would have to think about it some more later. Maybe switch to a different name. Maybe I should choose a different name. What he sounds like right now is stupid idiot. The first step to starting his all-new life would, of course, have to be proceedings with which Shenjingzhou was most familiar. First, for a prop, he needed a folding fan, one with a white silk base decorated with an ink wash painting of mountains and rivers. So fucking bougie. Shenjingzhou snapped the fan open and waved it before his chest, sending his long hair and whiskers flying. Perhaps his image wasn't ideal and was slightly unsuited to said prop. But that didn't matter. With a folding fan in his hand, badass act is at my command. Get in the bin. Get Oh, I hate him. Shenjingzhou placed one foot on the mountain rock and said, "Speak, exactly what intentions have brought you to infiltrate the human realm?" A crowd of trembling people, no, demons, huddled before him, though to be honest, from appearance alone, there was basically no difference. "Usually we only steal small trinkets from the human realm and take them back to trade," the frontmost one said, shaking with fear. The demon realm didn't have a common currency, so they often bartered. If something caught their eye, they'd trade for it, or if it didn't, they wouldn't. Between the demon race's questionable skill in craftsmanship and artistic tastes, to them, an everyday piece of human realm embroidery was a top-notch artisanal product. Therefore, all manner of ordinary trinkets from the human realm were exceedingly popular among demonkind. By contrast, the items they valued least were the various crystals with special effects that were a dime a dozen in their homeland. But being a dime a dozen in the demon realm didn't mean there wasn't a market for them among humans. Shenjingzhou snapped his fan shut and spoke solemnly. "This remote and destitute town, where neither birds shit nor chickens lay eggs, has poor production rates and a stagnant economy, and the level of general happiness is lower than average. Is it wrong for you to profit from their misfortune?" No, it is wrong for you to profit from their misfortune. The minor demon was at a loss. He was pretty sure that in the moment he was captured, this lofty master had also been borrowing clothes as well as the fan with which he was happily fanning himself. Oh my god. "I was compelled by my circumstances," Shenjingzhou thought. "Surely you can't expect me to wander around in clothes that had been exhumed from the dirt like some kind of savage." However, this actually opened up a new line of thought. Those minor demons had never dared to do more than snoop and thieve here and there. But if he could supply them with an honest channel for small goods, perhaps within the world that revolved around cultivation and monster fighting, he could forge paths into a new frontier based on farming and amassing capital. Shenjingzhou irresponsibly fantasized for a while, then felt that if he were to accept underlings, they needed to understand each other's cultural practices. "Do you eat rotten flesh?" he asked amiably. The minor demons shook their heads. Shenjingzhou was about to sigh of relief when the leader effusively said, "My pa said that only the rich and influential can afford rotten flesh." Enough. It isn't at all a question of economic access, okay? After climbing to the top of the demon realm, Lobinka had been more than influential, right? So how come he'd never enjoyed this kind of thing on page? After a pause, Shenjingzhou changed his angle. "What is your name?" The first one replied. This is where it comes from. The first one replied, 6 balls. What does that mean? "When I was born, my pa held me and said I was 6 balls heavy." Shenjingzhou is speechless. What balls? Shot put balls or ping pong balls? This kind of name is absolutely meaningless. Okay, it's the fact that 6 balls is mentioned so much in the Scum villain fandom, and it's such a fucking throwaway character. Like, no. I've read this book like 4 times already, and I never remember him. I don't know how the fandom does it. Why do we remember 6 balls? That's fucking stupid. Oh my god. The rest of the demons then scrambled to declare their own names, each one more unbearable than the last. They seemed to take much pride in them. Are the names chosen by demon commoners all this literal? Family names didn't exist in demon culture, so the names they chose were daring and audacious, bold and unrestrained. You could tell at a glance that those generals with names that left people speechless, such as Elder Skyhammer or Elder Single Arm, had started as nobodies and climbed to the top. But if you came from nobility, such as Mo Bei-jun, Xia Hualing, or Lo Binghe's father, Tianlang-jun, their name situation was a little better. It then occurred to Shen Qingqiu that it was fortunate Lo Binghe hadn't been tossed into the demon realm and found there. If he'd been taken by demon commoners, in accordance with these naming conventions, he might have been dubbed something that made it sound like his parents hated him. What would he be called? Jade-faced little playboy? Evil demonic incubus spirit? You're telling on yourself. Shen Qingqiu, you're telling on yourself. Oh my god. No. It needed to be something more earth-shatteringly terrifying. Then he remembered, oh my god, that in the original story, some girl had bashfully expressed that Lo Binghe's that was very that. With an uncountable harem and innumerable trysts, he could effortlessly pull his trigger in every manner of setting, and even after eons, the gun remained infallible, as vigorous as ever. In truth, the name Peerless Cucumber would have suited Lo Binghe quite well, but since Shen Qingqiu had already taken it, then Lo Binghe might as well be Heavenly Pillar June? Fuck, little Heavenly Pillar. How painfully exhilarating. Shen Qingqiu had been laughing for a while when he abruptly slapped himself. God, that's so him to do. That is just so fucking him. It's so him. I love him. The fuck is wrong with you? Getting carried away using the great master protagonist to come up with a tasteless, dirty joke in your head? What's funny about this? Don't you get that? Don't you get that some people are off limits for your crass humor? The minor demons watched this lofty master first laugh so hard that he fell to the ground, then slap himself in anger. Mystified, they didn't dare do so much as breathe loudly. You know what he actually really okay. This is gonna show my K-pop ness in me a little, but why does he remind me of Jin right now? Why does he remind me of Seokjin right now? Oh my god. They're back! BTS are back! Anyway. Then Shen Qingqiu suddenly stopped smiling and pressed his fan into Six Balls' shoulder, pulling him close. As he did, Shen Qingqiu plucked a sword tassel from the demon's waist. Where did you get this? It was a sword tassel, but it was no ordinary sword tassel. Hello, loser. No ordinary sword tassel. It was what male and female leads always exchanged as love tokens. You get that? Back at Sangchong Mountain, Shen Qingqiu had made a point to take special notice of this one, so it didn't need to be distinctive to stand out to him. How had this thing fallen into the hands of a minor demon in the Borderlands? Terrified, Six Balls responded, I didn't steal it. I found it. Hit the streets and find me another one then, if it's so easy, Shen Qingqiu thought. Where did you find it? These days, an important person has been traveling the roads at night, though first they send their subordinates to clear the way. We were a little curious and hid by the roadside, then afterward we found this on the road. Don't steal my nuts. What the fuck? That's so rude, I can't believe you would do that. I'm storing them for winter. How could you do this? The important person the minor demon described had to be someone at the pinnacle of power in the demon realm. This type of character didn't frequent the Borderlands. They would only draw attention. In fact, the local environment was most unsuitable for them. Exactly what kind of important person would boldly take over the roads with such swagger? even going so far as to leave behind an intimate item of Lu Mingyan's. Who could it possibly be? I fucking forgot about this. Oh my god. Who could it possibly be? The first possibility that came to Shen Qingzhou's mind was, of course, a certain someone. He asked, "The important person you're talking about, was it a good-looking young man?" When he thought about it, he decided against suppressing his conscience and clarified, "Not just good-looking, he's very good-looking, especially good-looking. Fair skin, pretty face, tall. He doesn't smile often, but when he does, it's especially dark. He's sounding exactly like, small face, big eyes, what's your WeChat? This is what he sounds like. He's, oh my god. I can't stand him." Six Balls shook his head, then suddenly blushed. "Why are you blushing?" Shen Qingzhou interrogated him for a while, but he couldn't get any answers. He decided internally that this mystery person probably wasn't Luo Bingke. Luo Bingke carried Qin Mo, and it was super crazy, ridiculous. And it was a super crazy, ridiculous, huge-ass cheat that broke every single rule. With a casual slash, it could cleave a space between the two realms, and with that slice you could open yourself a passage through which to enter the demon realm. Luo Bingke would never expend the effort required to make a special trip to the Borderlands, let alone to faithfully follow the paths of smugglers. If that was the case, a problem arose. Demons had passed through the area, yet they had left behind Lu Mingyan's belongings. Could it be that Lu Mingyan had slipped up and been captured? Shen Qingzhou didn't remember Lu Mingyan being the #1 female lead, suffering such treatment in the original work. What dumbass insignificant bandit would dare touch Luo Bingke's wife? Maybe her wife? Maybe her wife would dare touch her. Shen Qingzhou, stop being sus. Challenge him on the real. He can't. Furthermore, though the Lu siblings normally each cultivated on their own peaks, the original work had mentioned that their relationship was quite good. Perhaps their sibling bond only seemed distant because neither was the clingy type. But whether Shen Qingzhou saw her as Lu Qingge's little sister or as Qi Qingqi's beloved disciple, he couldn't just stand aside and do nothing. Moreover, at this time, the system was, seemingly, unable to threaten him, for now, and thus he had nothing to fear with regard to restrictions or massive deductions of B points or whatever, so why not go check it out? "Where is the rift in the boundary between realms?" Shen Qingzhou asked. That's a scene break. Hell yeah, that's a scene break. I'm going to take my break here. And then we'll continue on. I just need to get some more tea. I'll be very fast. But yes, I'll be right back. Alright. Alright, BRB. Okay, hi, I'm back. Okay, hi, I'm back. We are at the bottom of the steps. You're at the bottom of page 184. 184? What if I spoke like this? What if I read like this the entire time? Money, money, money. Okay. 184. Let's keep it going. Lesbians! Okay, I'm just excited about lesbians, because, what? Why? Why would you be excited about lesbians? I don't know, you tell me. Anyway, at midnight, Shen Qingzhou hid in the treetops, with all traces of his presence concealed, overlooking the area below. After an unknown length of time, a certain patch of air began to visibly distort. Shen Qingzhou's eyes lit up. He held his breath, attention rapt, and watched a youth in black rush out of it. They were a great distance away from each other, but Shen Qingzhou's eyes were incredibly sharp, and he could see the boy clearly. This youth was around 17 or 18 years old, with a tense expression on his sharp and handsome face. Actually, Shen Qingzhou found that face somewhat familiar. He just couldn't remember where he'd seen it. Nevertheless, he was certain he had... It's him! Suddenly, a crisp female voice, at once sweet and cold, broke the silent night and echoed through the forest. Baijian Peak's disciples are truly exceptional. Your body's constrained by 100 immortal binding cables, yet you're still able to wipe the floor with a great many of my subordinates, and you fled so far. I truly can't lower my guard for an instant. On hearing this voice, realization hit Shen Qingzhou. A demon who was beautiful, of noble background, and had subordinates, who a minor demon would blush at mentioning. It had to be Xia Hualing. Sorry, so what if this girl was one of the female leads? She hadn't been around for way too long, and thus he'd pretty much forgotten about her. If Lu Mingyan had fallen into Xia Hualing's hands, her fate was even more cause to worry. If Xia Hualing settled for slashing up Lu Mingyan's face, she'd be going easy on her. No wonder this youth's running posture had seemed odd just now, his body noticeably heavy. Shen Qingzhou had only focused on his face before, but now he continued looking downward. As it turned out, there were numerous thin silver wires bound around the lad. The color of his robes confirmed that he really was from Baijian Peak, but Shen Qingzhou could summon no memory of ever having seen such a young disciple before. The youth knew he couldn't beat his opponent in speed, so he abruptly braked, his eyebrows furrowed fiercely. If you want to fight, let's fight. There was a flash of gauzy red cloth, and Xia Hualing walked toward him with swaying hips that emphasized her figure. It took me so much effort to catch you, she said, full of smiles. How could I bear fight you? Quickly, why don't you come back with me? The youth's temper was violent, and he spat at her. You won't? Xia Hualing asked. I won't damage your spiritual energy, but chopping off an arm or leg, or whatever, won't injure that part of you. Girly. As she spoke, her right hand reached out to grab the youth, but before she could touch him, an odd tremor suddenly traveled down her fingers. Xia Hualing assumed she'd fallen for some trick on the youth's part, and quickly withdrew. She then raised her hand to examine it. Her 5 cinnabar-painted nails had been uniformly trimmed a noticeable length shorter. It was only her nails, and it hadn't hurt in the least, but Xia Hualing's blood went instantly cold. Who's there? She shouted. If someone lurking nearby could cut her nails with such ease, then they could just as effortlessly slice open her neck. Shen Qingzhou was feeling much more relieved as he released a twig plucked clean of leaves. it's these stupid little things, okay? In truth, he just wanted to scare Xia Hualing a little, and while he was at it, keeping her nails so long really wasn't good. Every time Xia Hualing saw them, he was worried they'd break, which made him extraordinarily uncomfortable. Plus, they'd often scratched Lo Bingha's back into a bloody mess. Even if airplane shooting towards the sky liked that kind of hardcore flavor, and even if Lo Bingha's healing ability was inhuman, it didn't mean this habit was proper or indicative of a healthy lifestyle. This guy. Stay in your lane. Oh my god. Xia Hualing's killing intent spiked. She whirled a red cloth and summoned a mass of chilling demonic qi, gathering it around her fingers, and then struck at the youth. This maiden wasn't scared stiff. She was scared angry. Truly a character. Shen Jingzhou had no choice but to leap down from the treetops to drop between the two. He gathered energy in his hand and fired a spiritual blast directly meeting Xia Hualing's. He had known that this body was full to bursting with spiritual energy, but he hadn't thought it was bursting to such an extent. Their palms hadn't yet connected when Xia Hualing was flung straight back like a repellent magnet. At the same time, those skimpy clothes tore once more. Though this was an unexpected bonus, Shen Qingzhou had always insisted on the rule of, under no circumstances, look at an unexpected bonus from women in this world who have above-average looks. He censored it himself. Good boy. Xia Hualing was also more than direct. Last time she had let out some vicious words, but this time, having weighed their respective strengths, she had no words for the occasion and had just dropped into a roll. When she lunged into that patch of distorted air, her figure instantly vanished. Shen Jingzhou tossed his fan several times, channeling spiritual energy into it and transforming the fan into a blade, which he sliced down with a flip of his hand. The immortal binding cables fell into some 100 pieces. I'm sorry, he can just cut them? I thought the immortal binding okay. Sure. The youth performed the respectable act of cupping his fist. Many thanks to Senior for the rescue. In turn, Shen Jingzhou performed the respectable act of asking, You're a disciple of Baijian Peak. I am. Under who? My master is Baijian Peak Lord, Lu Qingge. Shen Jingzhou was genuinely astonished. Lu Qingge never accepted disciples. On that Baijian Peak of his, at most there were people equal to him in seniority, and other than that, there were the disciples his Shishong and Shidi had taken in. The man himself wasn't interested in teaching. To be fair, what Baijian Peak called teaching was just putting effort into beating up on one person in particular. Shen Jingzhou had some slight suspicions. What's your name? Yang Yizhuan, the youth answered, loud and clear. Like I said, he looked familiar, so I definitely seen him somewhere before, right? A young child could certainly grow up in 5 years. Shen Jingzhou looked at Yang Yizhuan up and down, as though, as he thought of how Lu Qingge had sworn that he wouldn't accept disciples because it was too troublesome. But he had in the end, hadn't he? I wonder fucking why. I wonder why. It's not because you encouraged him to take on disciples right before he died. Right before you died. You fucking idiot. It's just everyone is in love with him and he doesn't realize it, but it's so obvious. He's the main love interest. Stupid. God. Senior? Asked Yang Yishuan. How has your Shizun been this past few years? Asked Shen Jingzhou. At their parting in Huayue City, Lu Qingge had lost to Lo Binghe, and it must have been a true blow. Shen Jingzhou felt he absolutely had to ask after his Shidi's current condition. You're awake again. Real. He's been defeated in every battle, Yang Yishuan said honestly. Shen Jingzhou was silent. The idea that the Baijian Peak Lord could be associated with the phrase defeated in every battle, it really made one shake in one's boots. Who did he fight? Shen Jingzhou asked. Lo Binghe? Yang Yishuan humphed. Who else but that little beast? Shen Jingzhou's expression twisted slightly. Yang Yizhan himself was quite a bit younger than Luo Bingke, yet he still called him little beast. Who had he learned this from, I wonder? He didn't yet know that nowadays, whenever anyone in Sangchong Mountain sect referred to Luo Bingke, it was always little beast, demon fiend, or ingrate. If they called him by his name and added that bastard, it was considered courteous. How did you fall into the demon woman's hands? Shen Jingzhou asked. Her words just now were a little strange. What was that "how could I bear to fight you" business about? Yang Yizhuan's face immediately flushed red. If that demon woman hadn't used such devious methods, first disguising herself as a woman who'd fallen into misfortune, then, when I became suspicious, suddenly taking off, I absolutely wouldn't have fallen into her trap and been captured. Shen Jingzhou instantly understood. Look at yourself. Look at you. Are you really a representative of Baijian Peak? He lectured. Avoiding feminine charms doesn't mean fearing them. So what if she took off her clothes? So what if a maiden stripped right in front of you? Back when your Shizun went to fight succubi, their entire cave was filled with unclothed bodies. Unclothed, I'm sorry. Like master, like disciple, I guess. Oh god. I forgot about the succubus cave. Mind you, at that time, Shen Jingzhou had also been there, and true enough, he'd begun to suspect that Lu Qingge was either asexual or impotent. ... You can't bear to think that he might be a secret third option? This fucking guy. Yang Yishan's face was filled with longing admiration. An entire cave, as expected of Shizun. Then he said curiously, Does Senior know my master well? How else could you know of how my Shizun fought succubi? Shen Jingzhou coughed once. Old affairs, old affairs. Getting back to the main topic, Xia Hualing hadn't just captured Yang Yishan, she'd likely also taken Lu Mingyan. She would capture Sangcheng Mountain Sect disciples in such a high-profile manner only for one reason. Something had gone wrong with Luo Binghe. Luo Binghe's cultivation system was unscientific in the extreme. He had to multitask and coordinate the two systems within him in order to combine diametrically opposed forces into one working network. This meant that his spiritual and demonic chi had to operate as mutual checks and balances against each other. However, once Jin Mo got involved, his demonic chi surged and the balance was lost, throwing the whole into disarray. In order to resolve this issue, Luo Binghe employed a method that involved looking for human vessels. When the moon was full, he'd search for someone with strong spiritual energy and pass the excess demonic chi in his body to them. In exchange, he absorbed the greater part of the vessel's spiritual chi. In this way, he naturally regained his balance. However, because Luo Binghe's demonic chi was far too intense, the human vessel would often be left crippled by the energy transfer. Generally speaking, these extraction implements were limited to a single use. And of course, Luo Binghe wouldn't do the demanding work of capturing human vessels himself. Naturally, it was Xia Hualing who stored people in cages for him to pick from as he pleased. No explicit orders needed. Luo Binghe simply needed to deploy Shin Mo to cleave open a passage to the demon realm on the night of the full moon and grab somebody to use. The sad thing was that in the original work, Xia Hualing had gone to all that effort, and then Luo Binghe had gotten together with 3 beautiful nuns from Tianyi Temple, victims she had personally selected. As one might imagine, Xia Hualing nearly went mad with anger. While you were captured, did you see anyone else? Shen Jingzhou asked. Where were you held? Yang Yishan shook his head. As soon as we entered the rift between realms, we were in the lair of that demon woman, Qi Yun Cave. I was shut in a single-person cell and didn't see anyone. Shen Jingzhou tossed and caught Lu Mingyan's sword tassel several times. My guess is that you weren't the only one captured. He thought for a bit. He thought for a bit, then decided to go take a look. In any case, tonight wasn't the full moon, so it wasn't time for the extraction. Lobinko. Sorry, there's sirens and they're distracting me. They're gonna come by my street. There they are. There it is. Jesus. Get out of the way, y'all. Okay. Anyway. Where the fuck was I? He thought for a bit, then decided, okay. So it wasn't time for extraction. Lobinka would be away, busy stirring up havoc and inciting chaos in the human realm, so he probably wouldn't come looking to meet with Xia Hualing. And save Lu Mingyan, who shouldn't have appeared here in the first place, wouldn't count as messing up the plot. Rather, he'd be correcting it. Yang Yizhuan hurried to catch up. I'll come too. My sword is still in that demon woman's hands. You're not scared she'll take off her clothes? Asked Zhen Jingzhou. There's no way I'd be scared, Yang Yizhuan said disdainfully. Besides, throughout that entire trip, she took them off dozens of times. There's nothing remarkable about it anymore. Shen Jingzhou turned around, speechless. So the reason she shut you in a single-person cell was actually so she could strip for your eyes and only. What an unbelievable bonus. Young man, if you continue at this pace, you'll definitely die to the male lead. How worrisome. You're Lu Qingge's sole disciple. Passing through the spatial rift was like passing through a gushing flow of warm water. Once they re-emerged, they were in demon territory. On the human side, it was already past midnight, but on the demon side, twilight had only just fallen. The air was particularly arid. After standing there a moment, Shen Jingzhou grew a bit dizzy, like he was suffering from altitude sickness. Arid? Arid? Is that how you pronounce it? As far as the eye could see, there seemed to be little difference from the human realm, although the trees were a tad sparser. Looked like their greenification efforts were a bit lacking. Yang Yizhuan led the way. They passed through the craggy stones and soon found the opening of Qiyun Cave. It's an honor to see you at last, O cultural monument of the demon race. Seeing it in person, Shen Jingzhou found that, sure enough, it was unique. It was in the demon race's nature to prefer darkness. Most of their permanent and temporary residences were located wholly underground. When he took in the entire entrance, it seemed to him to be an exceptionally splendid mausoleum. A tablet inscribed with 3 characters in twisty red calligraphy, erected in front of a big pile of rocks. Tell me, what could that be if not a tombstone? Shen Jingzhou thought. He cupped a handful of spiritual energy ready at all times to make a mess of any enemy who might show their face. But after he started down the tomb passage, the cave entrance, not once did he see any guards. When he thought about it, it made sense. Only demons had ever sneaked into the human realm to throw their weight around. What humans would suicidally run over to this side? The demons had absolutely no need to arrange for guards. The pair stealthily moved deeper. After passing through the stone corridors, they arrived at a large hall. The hall was carpeted with the intact skins of all manner of strange beasts. At first glance, they seemed to be still alive. Xia Hualing was currently barefoot, pacing back and forth with an enormous tiger skin spread over the floor of the hall. Shen Jingzhou was worried that Yang Yizhuan would recklessly make a sound to alert her. Just as he was about to remind him to shush, he saw that the child had sensibly shut his mouth. Reassured, he turned back around. On both sides of the hall were numerous cages, each holding tightly bound cultivators in different colored uniforms. Some looked awfully young, but he also saw veterans. Some were drowsily nodding off, and others were glowering in fury. Xia Hualing walked over to one of the cages, arms crossed. You people from Sangcheng Mountain Sect really are both troublesome and annoying. Capturing 2 of you took so much effort, and one even escaped before he could be shut away. She clenched her teeth. If not for, I'm really itching to break all your legs. In this case, Lu Mingyan sat with her veil covering her face, her eyes closed and legs crossed, impervious to outside matters. Xia Hualing saw that she was being ignored and smiled coldly. That thing on your face, don't you ever take it off? Oh, I see. Could it be that your face is so ugly that you dare not take it off out of shame? Girl, do you know who you'll envy the most in the future? Saying she's ugly is just going to give yourself a thorough slap in the face. Xia Hualing's woman's intuition was acting up. No matter how she looked at Lu Mingyan, the cultivator irritated her from every angle. She opened the cage, dragged Lu Mingyan out, and yelled, "Kneel!" Lu Mingyan was naturally unwilling to do so. Though she was thoroughly without spiritual energy, she stood firm. Xia Hualing pushed and shoved, but she was utterly unable to make Lu Mingyan's knees bend even a little. Enraged to the point that steam came out of her ears, she snatched the veil off Lu Mingyan's face. And this is where I bring an illustration up. Yay! Yay! Where are we? Oh, these are all out of order. Okay. This should be it. There we go! Oh, I love women! Oh, there they are, my lesbians! Let's go, lesbians! Let's go! Oh my god, I love them so much. Are you kidding me? I bet she will kneel for her eventually. Just for fun. I love them. In that moment, Xia Hualing's delicate snow-pale face became even more snow-pale. Turn around, I want to see! Shen Qingzhou howled internally. Quickly, let me see what the most beautiful woman in this book looks like! All these years, he'd been mindful of his status, so he couldn't have just said, "Hey, Shizun, I heard your what? Hey, that's not what he says. Hey, Shiji. Shiji? Okay. I heard you're super pretty, so I wanted to look at your face. May I?" That sounded like something a pervert would say when sexually harassing someone, but having spent so long unable to see Lu Mingyan's face, he felt like he was about to burst. However, someone's about to burst. However, before Lu Mingyan could turn and let him experience the joy of a first glance, malice flashed through Xia Hualing's eyes. Her fingers curved into claws and shot toward Lu Mingyan's face. She's having gay thoughts. She's having too many gay thoughts. And thus, for a second time that night, Xia Hualing was sent flying, and she was finally unable to stop herself from coughing up a sullen mouthful of blood. A dash of self-consolation flashed through her mind. At least my clothes weren't damaged this time. I won't need to change again, right? Although Shen Qingzhou had sent her flying, she'd still clawed 5 gashes into his sleeve. Didn't I trim those fingernails an hour ago? He thought, shocked. Are they capable of unlimited regeneration? After tossing Xia Hualing away, he promptly turned his head to look at Lu Mingyan, and as soon as he did, his feet slipped out from under him. In the blink of an eye, she'd instantly put her veil back on. What's wrong with letting me have a glance? Yang Yizhan had found his sword stabbed into a seam in the rocks, and he had already started hacking at the chains on the cave door with matchless speed. A throng of cultivators swarmed out with each chop. Then Shen Qingzhou saw 3 navy blue silhouettes out of the corner of his eye, and said with great alarm, Stop! Don't do anything impulsive!" Confused, Yang Yuzhan turned his head. "Is something wrong, Senior?" The words had barely left his mouth when Shen Qingzhou realized that he had already opened the cage at hand, and 3 dainty Taoist nuns, with faces that could have been cast from the same mold, rushed out of Qi Yun Cave like a trio of whirlwinds. "Buddy, by haphazardly releasing everyone like this, you've released some people who shouldn't have left." He had released the three sisters responsible for settling Lo Bingha's demonic chi in the long term. But the blunder had already occurred. Shenjing's heart flooded with tears, but it wasn't like he could run after the nuns and stuff them back into their cages. There was no other option. He could only join in releasing people. As he freed them, he sighed and lamented. He was dead. He had managed to totally ruin a plot thread. The first meeting between the male lead and the three members of his harem, a freak accident, had messed up the scenario in which they fooled around and cultivated together. He could only place his hope in that hard-working employee, Xia Hualing, who would bravely go back to war and ideally recapture them to present to Lo Binghe. It was criminal. Criminal! Shen Qingzhou was still wallowing in remorse when he lowered his head and unexpectedly found himself looking at a familiar face. His heart thumped. Fuck. It truly was an unlucky year. His enemies kept marching down that narrow road. Chu Haitang was huddled in the cage, staring at him with a bewildered expression. Shen Qingzhou was stupefied for a couple of seconds, then feigned ignorance. He motioned for her to hurry out, then nonchalantly turned around. With his current appearance, no one, in parentheses, should have recognized him. Moreover, 5 years ago, countless pairs of eyes had witnessed the scene of Shen Qingzhou's self-detonation. There was nothing to worry about. After coughing up blood, Xia Hualing remained sprawled on the floor in a daze for a while, then finally struggled into a seated position with great difficulty. She focused her gaze and yelled, "It's you! Who the hell are you? You actually dared follow me here? You sure have some guts!" Yang Yizhuan looked like it had suddenly occurred to him to ask this question as well. So, as he was setting people free, he asked offhandedly, "Oh right, Senior, who are you?" "Wait a second. Who are you?" "Oh right, my ass. Young man, your reaction time was way too slow. Also, what's with that tone, like you're asking something tangential and unimportant?" Shen Qingzhou was considering whether to introduce himself with the title of Peerless Cucumber again, when Xia Hualing puffed out a laugh. "Whatever, you've come this far, so don't imagine I'll allow you to leave." She clapped her hands, bells jingling around her wrists. After a moment, Qi Yun Cave's guard regiment finally flooded into the hall from every corner. Qi Yun Cave was Xia Hualing's private residence, so her regular underlings weren't around, and these useless troops were nothing to fear. Those minor demons circled around and around them, raising and lowering their arms, looking exactly like they were performing some kind of backwater dance ritual. Shen Qingzhou was mystified by the sight, but he was impatient, so he prepared to send them all flying with his fan, when to his surprise, it seemed like countless strands of hair had fallen all over him, constraining his movements. Immortal binding cables. This is literally spirit. More ropes. Even though these multi-troops didn't have much fighting ability, they were obviously trained. Each held a hair-thinned immortal binding cable, and they circled him non-stop. It is Spirit, winding him into a giant ball of string until he was fully entwined. It's Spirit! Xia Hualing hadn't managed to cheer in victory before Shen Qingzhou laughed, then violently stomped on the floor, the air filled with the sound of snapping strings. They had burst. The immortal binding cables had been thoroughly snapped by this person who flooded them with spiritual energy. More or less everyone there was so terrified they completely forgot the task at hand. This really was the first time they had seen someone who could use spiritual energy to simply snap immortal binding cables. What a straightforward and brutal method of freeing oneself. "Just run!" Shen Qingzhou yelled. The freed cultivators didn't need additional encouragement. Most of them were already long gone. Yang Yizhan and Lu Mingyan had just struggled free of their immortal binding cables, and the circulation of their spiritual energy was still unstable. Knowing they would only get in the way if they stayed, and seeing that Shen Jingzhou would likely be able to handle things, they retreated, leaving with only, Senior, take care. The underlings didn't know whether to chase them and remained stuck in place, waiting for their superiors' orders. Xia Hualing pointed at Shen Jingzhou, a strange gleam in her eyes. Catch him, she shouted. Don't worry about the others, just him. Hold him down, even if you die trying. A few hodgepodge soldiers threw themselves at Shen Jingzhou, and he sent them flying with his fan. Then something heavy pressed down on his head. A giant net. Was he a bug? Countless immortal binding cables, each the thickness of a pinky finger, had been woven into a giant net, which was draping down upon his head. When it settled over Shen Jingzhou, its weight alone forced his knees to fold, and he nearly fell flat onto the ground. Where did you get this kind of bizarre prop? What cables with cables this thick? Are you sure it's for binding immortals? Maybe you mean elephants. Shen Jingzhou waited a while, and only after seeing that Shen Jingzhou was indeed unable to struggle free this time, she lazily approached. Her previously wretched state had been swept tidily away. Xia Hualing felt that she had completed a monumental task and was wholly content. Even her reprimands took on a coquettish tone. If 100 immortal binding cables can't hold you down, then why wouldn't I use 1,000 or 10,000? She chuckled. This immortal binding net wasn't originally prepared for you, and yet it was used on you, so you should feel supremely honored. Don't flail about. As long as you behave, I won't do anything. I won't do anything to you. If you won't do anything to me, can I trouble you to withdraw this net? Asked Shen Jingzhou. I love him so fucking much. But the demon race's star employee, Xia Hualing, had jumped right back into her grand missionary sales pitch. What the fuck? MXTX. It seems that you are blessed with extraordinary talent, she said as she crouched down, though she was speaking mainly to herself. If you were to surrender and pledge yourself to my people's banner, power and glory would be what the hell? Pledge yourself to my people's banner, power and glory would be within your grasp. Of course, even if you won't pledge yourself, it doesn't matter. What should be done must be done. Some suffering will be unavoidable. You should consider this carefully. No wonder Xia Hualing had ignored the others fleeing the cave and concentrated all her firepower on him. Lo Binghe needed Lo Binghe needed spiritually powerful human vessels, abundant in spiritual energy. I can't say spiritual. It's just spiritual. Of all the cultivators she had captured, none of them had been more spiritually powerful than Shen Jingzhou. So this brat was planning to offer him to Lo Binghe as a human vessel. Releasing the 3 beautiful flowers had been a purely unthinking mistake. Shen Jingzhou had certainly never planned to fill in the gap they left behind himself. He had that old feeling of having accidentally picked up the wrong script. It made him vaguely suspicious that the scam of the system was still around. No way. Shen Jingzhou was thinking up escape plans when Xia Hualing fixed her slightly messy hair and with a swing of her hips forged ahead out of the hall. From a distance, Shen Jingzhou heard the sound of her soft and delicate laughter. My lord, it isn't the night of the full moon. Why did you think to visit this subordinate? Although you came at just the right time, as it turns out, I prepared a special gift for you. It's right in here. In a split second, a flood of hot blood mixed with cold sweat surged into Shen Jingzhou's head. He didn't know where he found this burst of explosive power, but he grabbed the side of the net and sent the bottomless pool of spiritual chi in his body outward in the form of a spiritual blast. Bang. A giant boom sounded. Xia Hualing's smile became fixed on her face. She sprinted back to the inner hall in a panic and was left staring tongue-tied at the sight. In the middle of the hall, every last one of Qi Yun Cave's minor demons lay sprawled every which way all over the ground. In the center of the immortal binding net, there was an immense hole. its edges still sizzling with flashing sparks, and wisps of smoke, and wisps of white smoke drifting through the air. That man was, in a word, terrifying. He'd rent a devastatingly large hole in the in the specially made immortal binding net, and he was gone. The person behind Xia Hualing passed her and strolled into the hall. Qi Yun Cave was lightless and dim. Only his straight and slender silhouette was visible, along with a subtle silver light reflecting off the embroidered patterns on his black robes. After a moment, Lo Binghe spoke with a tone that was neither pleased nor angry. "And this is your special gift?" Due to a momentary miscalculation, I let him get away," Xia Hualing said bitterly. Her distressed heart was dripping blood. An immortal binding cable net woven from thousands of immortal binding cables, originally meant to be used on those stinking cultivators from Sangchong Mountain Sect, had been torn open with a massive hole just like that. This wasn't something she could just sew and patch with a needle, then go back to using like it was nothing. Lo Binghe's back was facing her. He lowered his head and looked over the wreckage as he said icily, "I seem to recall telling you that people from Sangchong Mountain Sect were off limits." Drops of cold sweat dripped down Xia Hualing's forehead. Lo Binghe had indeed told her this. However, the spiritual energy levels of Sangchong Mountain Sect's disciples were generally higher than those of other sects' disciples by a good margin, and so they were the most suitable human vessels for extraction. Clinging to wishful thinking, she just captured a few, thinking that maybe she could switch their clothes and slip them into the collection undetected. She hadn't expected that Lo Binghe would somehow still be able to tell who she'd captured, even after they'd all fled. Internally, she couldn't help but feel her blood freeze over. "Don't be angry, my lord," she said hurriedly. "I accidentally captured 2 of them, but I released them right after. Rather, this time, this subordinate found someone exceptional. I've never seen a cultivator with more abundant spiritual energy. If you had that one person, you'd no longer need to switch to a new vessel every month." She bit her lip and added, "As long as you give me a certain thing." After waiting for a moment, she suddenly extended her hand to catch the object tossed her way. Securely clutching it in her palm, she smiled, determined. "Hi, Bobby, how are you?" "Thanks for reading during." Wait, I love that. Unfortunately, I think this is where we are stopping today. We do have like 10 more pages to the next chapter, which I could possibly continue doing. I just need to go to the bathroom, though. I think I can maybe make it to the next chapter. You know what? Let's try. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick, but I'll be back to finish this chapter. Alright? Alright. Oh, we can take this down as well. But they're so pretty. Oh, they're so pretty. I wanna have them. I want all of these illustrations in like a wallpaper format, with each one just on my wall. Okay. Anyway, I'll be right back. Burp. Alright, I'm back. Welcome back to me. Let's finish this chapter. We are on the middle of page 203. At this time, Shen Jingzhou had already run miles away and was terrified out of his mind. His terror wasn't because he'd just made an explosive getaway from right under Luo Binghe's nose, but rather because in that split second he'd heard an exceedingly familiar and hateful voice. A mechanical voice with a tone like Google Translate. Fuck. New hardware should be guaranteed virus-free. Where's my promised chance to turn over a new leaf, to henceforth be a bird soaring high and free? Shen Jingzhou covered his ears as if, this way, he could pretend the voice didn't exist, and in this manner he dashed from the demon realm to the human realm as fast as lightning, tearing the entire way through from the desolate waste to the borderlands. Yet that demonic sound poured into his brain unceasingly, as though it were stationed within his very psyche. Activating, binding to soul, debugging, contacting customer service. So it was bound to his soul. The system had reactivated upon encountering Luo Binghe. So because it was bound to his soul, the system was... I switched bodies, so the connection is bad, and therefore you need to contact customer service? Huh? Luo Binghe was truly the bane of his existence. Fortunately, aside from repeating those few key words in a half-dead manner, the system was utterly incapable of forming complete sentences. Shen Jingzhou smacked his head the whole way, but upon seeing signs of human life here and there, he considered his appearance, then slowed his steps and strolled back into the garrison town. This small border town seemed more alive during the day than it had at night. It couldn't be called flourishing. The streets were neither wide nor narrow, and the pedestrians were neither many nor few. But with the store fronts open, it could still be considered to be thriving. Beside a tea shop with its flag fluttering in the wind, a young man and woman stood gazing into the distance, swords in hand. Why haven't you returned to Sangcheng Mountain? Shen Jingzhou asked as he walked over to them. Lu Mingyan gave him a shallow bow. The disciples from the other sects have already returned, Yang Yizhuan said hastily. Seeing the senior has managed to escape, we too are now at ease. Shen Jingzhou entered the tea shop with them, finding a table at which to sit down. Oh, this is a good part. To the side, some people who had originally been idly chatting suddenly cried out in alarm upon glimpsing him. Ah, it's... Shen Jingzhou turned around to look. It was those border guard disciples he'd saved the night at... What the fuck? It was those border guard disciples he'd saved the night he first crawled out of the ground. The person who first seen him stammered, unable to call out his name. It's you, peerless, Zhang Sheng, Lu Liu rushed to say. He mumbled another word after peerless, but it came out remarkably muttered from beneath his tongue. The others mimicked him one after another, with some degree of hastiness. It's you, Senior Peerless. Shen Jingzhou nodded his greetings, internally deciding that he really had to take up another title without delay. Senior, are you called Camellia? Commitment? Commander? Yang Yizhuan said blankly. Shen Jingzhou coughed twice and mumbled, It's... After using this ID for so many years, for the first time he finally felt a bit ashamed of it. He put on a stern expression. Last night, disciples from various sects saw me in Qiyun Cave. Though I can't conceal the fact of my existence anymore, if other people ask about me, say as little as possible. It would be ideal if you could keep your lips sealed on this topic altogether. Why? Senior, aren't you familiar with my master? Asked Yang Yishan. We are indeed quite familiar. While Shen Jingzhou was still unsure of what to say, the table to the side continued their conversation. Luca, why don't you elaborate? What exactly is the alternative theory? One person asked while sputtering out melon seed shells. About that, it's really rather interesting, said Lulu. This theory apparently originated with insiders and spread from there. So this Lo Binka and Shen Cho. Upon hearing these two names, Shen Cho's heart thumped. He involuntarily straightened his posture, pricking up his ears to listen. And the motion of the fan in his hands slowed. The pair of disciples from Sangchong Mountain sect also couldn't resist looking over. Lulu drank a mouthful of tea. This Lo Binka and Shen Cho were master and disciple, right? This Lo Binka came from a humble family and had suffered the hardships of the world since he was young. After becoming a disciple of Sangchong Mountain sect, he still went underappreciated for a while and was beaten down and humiliated by his peers. Fortunately, Shen Cho treated him with great warmth and kindness. He spoke with great flourish, his cadence rising and falling. With the traditional rosewood gavel in his hand, he would have looked no different from a professional storyteller. Shen Cho inwardly nodded. Right, he too could agree that until he kicked Lo Binka down into the endless abyss, he'd been quite kind-hearted. Yang Yishan snorted. What use was all that warmth and kindness? Didn't he still... Doesn't this theory run absolutely contrary to the rumors... Oh wait, who is saying this? Okay. Doesn't this theory run absolutely contrary to the rumors that Shen Cho abused his disciples? One person asked, flabbergasted. You're already astonished at this point, asked Liu. Then what are you going to do when I say that while the master and disciple were together, day and night, hidden feelings were born? They're just like me, for real, for real. The three people at Shen Cho's table had each taken a mouthful of tea. Upon hearing this sentence, Shen Cho and Yang Yishan simultaneously spat theirs out. Though Lu Mingyan didn't spit out hers. Her hand shook and her teacup tilted, spilling its contents all over the table. Lu Mingyan! Lu Mingyan! Oh my god. Everyone at the other table sucked in their breaths, one after another. That's the theory? That's right, said Lulu. But strictly speaking, it was only Lo Binka who harbored impure thoughts towards Shen Cho, a one-sided delusion. A one-sided delusion? A one-sided delusion? What sort of person was Shen Cho, Peak Lord of Qingjing Peak? What was the way of Qingjing Peak? Who is it? I don't know. What was the way of Qingjing Peak? To be tranquil of heart and forsake desire, devoting all thoughts to the lawful path of cultivation. Shen Cho rejected the mortal world and avoided entanglement with others, and so because Lo Binka sought after the unattainable, love gave birth to hate. Blue veins rose on Shen Cho's forehead and the backs of his hands. Love gave birth to hate? Yang Yishan asked, astonished. If you think of it this way, it's obscenely easy to explain everything else, Liu said. Without a doubt, the whole sequence of events at the Immortal Alliance conference went something like this. Lo Binka entered the battlefield as Qingjing Peak's head disciple. Because of his remarkable performance, he was filled with confidence. Right then, the demonic beast ran loose, the mountain was sealed, and Shen Cho entered Jue Gorge to provide backup. Seized by a momentary fit of madness, Lo Binka took the chance to confess his true feelings to his Shizun. Shen Cho held his forehead in misery. Why did it seem like for every 10 lines this person said, 9 would be about right, but the last one would sound off? And it was exactly due to that last sentence that the implications of the entire account became so bizarre. Shen Cho was of noble and unsullied moral character, so naturally he delivered a firm rejection, Liu said solemnly. Shen Cho was a little moved. Other than his bleeding heart of a Jiangmen Shishang, he'd never expected to hear someone else willing to use the phrase noble and unsullied moral character to describe him. Who could have predicted that right after that? Who could have predicted that right after the storyline would take a nosedive? Lulu continued, full of emotion. Who could have predicted that after being rejected, Lord Binka, in the grips of his despair, would be overtaken by wicked thoughts to the point that he lost his mind and embraced the abominable? Abominable? Yeah. Out of lust, he tried to force Shen Qingqiu to submit. Shen Qingqiu dug his fingers into his head of messy hair, burying his face in his hands. Yang Yizhan was thoroughly speechless. The gates of a whole new world had just been opened for this young man, assailing him with new perspectives. Lu Mingyan, on the other hand, just let out a soft "ah," and said, seriously, "So that's how it was." What do you mean, so that's how it was? What that is that referring to? Don't think I won't rip you a new one just because you're the female lead. Without his notice, a crew of spectators had congregated at Lulu's table to listen to his gossip, their melon seeds and wooden benches littering the floor, their attention rapt. At this time, they all sighed. A beast! Not just a beast, basically worse than that. But within these sighs was a tone of incomparable satisfaction. Daga, are you the captain of the Border Patrol Squadron or the Gossip Brigade? Lulu abruptly slammed his teacup down like a gavel. Of course Shen Qingqiu wouldn't submit. Master and disciple crossed swords, and in the end the master still came out on top. So Lo Binka retreated in defeat, leaving in sorrow. Though all pretenses had been shed, Shen Qingqiu still couldn't bear to ruin the reputation of his beloved disciple. He couldn't bear to be fully honest about what had happened, and could only offer the excuse that Lo Binka had died at the hands of the demon race. With this, he preserved the reputation of his disciple, being unwilling to cut him off entirely. So, this is the truth behind Lo Binka's years-long disappearance after the Immortal Alliance conference, as well as why he didn't return to Sangchong Mountain Sect despite having survived. It wasn't that he didn't want to see his Shizun, it was that he didn't have the face to. While the story was in full swing on Lulu's end, Shen Qingqiu's heart was flooding with tears in his. What an intense storyline! This... It's censored for me. This beepist and this White Lotus, Holy Mother... What? And this White Lotus, Holy Mother, who are they? The key point was that the art beep was actually what the fuck? The key point was that the art beep actually wasn't a successful art beep. This is way too fucking off. How could that be Lo Binka? If he wanted to art beep someone, they would obediently spread their legs themselves, okay? You are telling on yourself, my boy. My man, Shen Qingqiu right here, saying he'd willingly spread his legs for Lo Binka. It's canon, and we all knew it was canon, but it's so canon. Just the amount of canon it is insane. Lulu was still going on. After his heartbreak in the Immortal Alliance conference, Lo Binka went on his own adventures. He trained until he had a set of exceptional martial abilities to his name, and he even gained the favor of Huanhua Palace's old palace master, but he was still unwilling to give up on Shen Qingqiu. So, he staged a grand comeback. Thus came the events of Huayue City. Doesn't all of Sangchong Mountain Sect insist that Lo Binka is a demon? I don't think that's necessarily baseless, or wind from an empty cave. Most likely, they discovered slivers of evidence that he was colluding with the demon race to slander Shen Qingqiu. After all, Shen Qingqiu stood high above him, aloof and untouchable. If Lo Binka couldn't measure up in his eyes, he wanted to drag Shen Qingqiu down, make him fall from grace, and shatter his arrogance. Shen Qingqiu didn't know what exactly he'd given up on, but either way, he suddenly felt his body and mind relax, and he no longer wanted to listen or care about anything anymore. Let's order something, he said pleasantly to the other two. Peerless, Shangshen, you can count your table on my tab. Lu Liu seized the chance to say. Then he turned back around and continued to sorrowfully lament. Lo Binghe thought of every possible method to shut Shen Qingqiu into the water prison of Huanhua Palace. What do you think his goal was with this? His wicked ambitions were as clear as day. Huanhua Palace had long been in his pocket. He had an entire sect dancing in the palm of his hand. They claimed to be keeping Shen Qingqiu in temporary custody, pending the four sects' joint trial, but it was no different from throwing a lamb into a tiger's den. For a couple of days, Shen Qingqiu was shut in the water prison. He was bound with immortal binding cables and completely without spiritual energy. Who knows what that traitorous disciple did to him? In perfect harmony, the crowd cried out, one after another, in disgust. A traitorous disciple indeed! Raising a tiger invites calamity! Shen Qingqiu threw aside his menu. How about we go somewhere else? Shen Qingqiu, this is back to Lu Liu speaking. Shen Qingqiu couldn't take this humiliation, and after struggling with all his might, he managed to escape. Little did he know that he would be cut off in Huayue City by the search party sent by Lo Binghe. From top to bottom, Sangchong Mountain Sect is of one heart, so the Peak Lord of Baijian Peak, Lu Qingge, naturally came to provide assistance. This attempt to aid Shen Qingqiu was met head-on by Lo Binghe. Lo Binghe's jealousy overturned the heavens. He immediately took on Lu Qingge in an earth-shaking battle, going all out for the kill. With no other alternative, Shen Qingqiu could only self-detonate on the spot, and henceforth... Lu Liu stopped and waited for a meaningful silence, drawing a chorus of sighs from the crowd. Finally, he arrived at his conclusion. And so, this is the alternative theory that's been widely circulated underground. Even though it sounds incredibly absurd and some might treat it as complete nonsense, there are many details worth considering. Gentlemen, bear this in mind. When history is officially recorded, it's often whitewashed or embellished. It's often whitewashed. The actual facts purposely withheld, and many times the unofficial version is the truth. Those details aren't the slightest bit reliable, okay? The truth, your sister. Even if I had no girls to fondle for 20 years, no matter how wretched I became, I wouldn't get so desperate that I'd get gay with a guy, let alone get gay with a male lead. This is the same man that said he'd spread his legs willingly for the male lead, 2 pages ago. Yep. Same guy. Same guy. Just mind you, keep that in mind. The young waitress had finished gracefully weaving her way to their table and serving their dishes, but Yang Yishan and Lu Mingyuan were still in a daze. Hurry up and eat, Shen Qingqiu reprimanded them. After you finish, you should hurry back. If these children stay any longer in this dangerous place, who knew what kind of assaults their views on life, the world, and morality would suffer? And that's the end of the chapter. Ugh. And we only have one chapter. No, we have 2 chapters left. Okay. No, 3 chapters left. 4? Shit. These ones are shorter, though. They look like, it seems like it would be like 2 chapters with how long these chapters have been, but it's 4, I guess. But yeah, that is where we are stopping today. Where is my bookmark? Bookmark, I can't find, oh, there it is. There it is. Ending on page 212. Before chapter 10, called Huanhua. Why is it called Huanhua? I wonder. Oh, I could never know unless I've read it before many times. Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one. It's like it's like an in-between, you know? Thanks for reading. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for letting me read to you. It's been fun. I really like this one. I think I just had a good reading time today. Although it wasn't that great, but I still had fun. It's so dramatic. It's so fucking dramatic. But yes, I will get my schedule out for this / next week, starting Monday next week. But I'm gonna be streaming a lot this upcoming week, okay? A lot. I'll be streaming tomorrow. I'll be playing Date Everything with you know him, you love him, maybe you don't. With Purge Dog Bit over there. What was I? Oh, okay. I'm gonna be streaming that tomorrow, Monday, 6 p.m. No, 8 p.m. PST, PDT, and then on Tuesday night. It would be Tuesday night for me, but it's actually. Oh, you know what? On Tuesday we're reading Remnants of Filth because I have a collab on Wednesday instead. So yeah, we're doing Remnants of Filth on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, which I know is already changing the time. Whatever, it's gonna work like this, okay? We're doing it, and then also on Tuesday night, but it's actually technically Wednesday. I'll be playing whatever with Foxy and Catlick again. and then you can just read the rest of my schedule when I post it. Okay? Okay. Should I be posting my schedule on YouTube? Guys, let me know. Should I do that? Have I done that before? I don't know if I should do that. Should I do that? Let me know. Okay? Okay. I'm gonna go because the sirens are coming for me. And no, I'm gonna go, and actually I've got a lot of recording to do. A lot of vocal recordings to do for covers and all that jazz, so I will do that. Do you mind? I'm trying to end my stream. Do you mind? That is very rude of you. So, here's the thing about my apartment is that the walls are super thick. Like, the walls are proper walls. The window, no soundproofing. One of the walls is almost all window, no soundproofing on this window, okay? I can hear everything outside. So yeah, that's why that comes in a lot. But yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, or next week, or whatever, alright? Alright. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being here. Have a good rest of your day, alright? Alright. Goodbye.